Hey everyone, it's Reggie with Lawyer Interviews. Today we are talking to Logan, who is a personal injury attorney out of Los Angeles, California. Hi Logan, how are
Hi,
you?
Reggie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, it's good to have you. We're so excited. And you're one of our veteran lawyers on here, been practicing over a decade. Sorry, I don't mean to age you like that, but
Time flies when you're having fun.
it does. It does. Well, Logan, I would love to have you start and just tell everyone a little bit about you and your practice.
Sure. Logan Quirk. I'm a personal injury attorney. I started in 2008, practicing with my brother. I ventured and started my own practice in San Diego and migrated back towards Los Angeles. And I have a few offices in the Southern California area, licensed in California, Nevada, and Montana as of this year.
Very cool. Now, did you have to
Yes.
take the bar for all of those or like a UBE or how
I
did you?
took two bars and then Montana by motion.
Oh, very cool.
So
Very,
I vowed after Nevada I would never take another bar again. So
okay. So how long after your first pass did you do the Nevada one?
immediately, I didn't want to forget all the information and that I had studied for the first bar.
I think that's the way to do it. I honestly don't think I could pass the bar exam again because just
I don't think I have the discipline to sit down and study and try and take a 2 or 3 day test again. I mean, it's a lot of effort and work, and I think discipline is the huge component a lot of people don't realize.
1,000%. And I think you know the most, at least in my experience, you know the most areas of law. Like you're probably your smartest on all the general areas right at the bar, and then you just lose it, right?
Yeah, like 2 weeks after it's all gone, ask you a question, you're like, I have no idea. It's all
Right.
gone.
No, it's so true. It's so true. Now, personal injury. Okay, let's talk. So what specific kind of cases do you usually handle? Is it all personal injury, or could you give us some examples?
Sure, I definitely handle garden variety, personal injury, car accident claims, dog bite claims, slip and falls. I have a lot of cases that involve premise liability and third party criminal activity cases. So, people being shot outside of bars or dispensaries. So, there's a kind of a niche practice I started taking on a few years back. But basically, garden variety, car accidents, motorcycle accidents, any type of accident not involving a doctor or any type of malpractice, I generally handle, or workers' compensation. I also don't handle that as well.
Very neat. Very neat.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with people, they're having probably some of the worst moments of their lives, right? They're injured, they need help, they need money. How do you handle that when people are going through such a hard time with the client?
Sure, truly. People never want a lawyer until they need one, I think is the proper adage. So you don't want to have me until you need me. Dealing with people, I try to be as real and transparent as possible. Be human. That's kind of been my approach for the last 14 years. Ask how they're doing and treat them like you want to be treated. I think if you exercise that rule, you can't go wrong. So we want to be compassionate, we want to be empathetic, but we also want to be efficient in their representation.
I love that. I really do. I think I think sometimes lawyers do forget we're human.
Yeah.
You go into the robotic part of the law and you're like, oh yeah, these are people. And,
Most definitely. I think the pandemic has allowed a lot of us to slow down or kind of reevaluate how we practice law. And a lot of lawyers, I think, and who I've spoken to have had the opportunity to get reacquainted with their files and kind of have a fresh perspective on how they approach the practice. And it's been nice to see this and kind of reinvigorate the process and kind of pivot in how we do business. I mean, you and I are doing Zoom, and this 2 or 3 years ago, we definitely would not be having this conversation unless it was over like a podcast, maybe. So it has been good to evolve and see law catch up to modern times, but also adapt as humans and be more human with our clients and how we practice in our daily lives.
No, that's fantastic perspective. And I would love to know too, since you've been practicing since '08, how has the practice of law changed? I mean, I know it's like a big ask, but how do
Sure.
you think it's a positive change since you've started to now, or do you not like the changes? Or I'd love to know your perspective.
Yeah, I generally am a person that likes evolution in practice and in life. If you don't adapt, then you might be eaten up by other models or people or firms. So I came in 2008 at the bottom of a recession when a lot of my friends didn't have jobs. I was very fortunate that I came into a job. So I saw what I had heard was the practice of law kind of switched in that downturn. A lot of big firms had gone out the traditional model of lawyer, paralegal, assistant. That was kind of flipped on its head. And I think this pandemic has totally upended the system all over again. So a lot of people are practicing out of their homes. A lot of people are hanging their own shingle. A lot of people are coming out of law school without jobs. And I think law schools have caught up a little bit. I'm not sure. I haven't really dug into the curriculum, but from what I can tell, they're trying to make the law students and the people that pass the bar more adept at running a practice. Because once you graduate law school, you don't know how to run a business, and it's kind of trial by fire, right?
Right.
So I think recently the changes have helped younger lawyers be better practitioners and better business people from an early onset, because they've had to kind of learn on their own and they haven't grown into a mentor-mentee relationship or role with other lawyers. So definitely the practice of law has changed. And then with the new things on the agenda with AI coming into law and these entities that may come on and be able to sponsor and kind of be it's big business in law now. And so there's a new initiative before the California bar to have, non-lawyers be able to practice or to, what am I looking for? Form corporations and business relationships with attorneys.
Okay.
And a lot of attorneys are reticent against that because we don't want Facebook or Amazon or Google coming in or venture capitalists coming in and practicing law. So there is a big worry that a lot of the mom and pop shops might get eaten up or put out of practice. But I think as long as you are running a good ethical practice and you work hard, you work smart, you enjoy what you're doing, you will find a way to evolve and adapt and be able to find your lane and be able to navigate pretty successfully.
Absolutely. It's a really interesting concept. California is not the only state that has, I mean, I guess this is a proposal, but I know that there's other states where paralegals can be licensed to, for instance, do like family.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. I was stuttering over my own words. No, I think one of the model states is Arizona. I don't know. I haven't followed it as closely as I should be following it, but I know there's a lot of fear and anxiety amongst practicing lawyers. Like you said, paralegals can come in and practice, and then these they're worried about big business coming in and partnering with law firms, and there might be these mega monopolies. Who knows? So there's a lot of uncertainty. I think that the last 10 years or 14 years, however long I've been doing it, there has been more uncertainty. Right. But lawyers are pretty resilient, and those that want to keep doing it, they're going to have to adapt, or otherwise might not do it anymore or go find another career.
Right. Absolutely. So what would you give, you've been in the game for a little bit, and now you're in multiple states. What advice would you perhaps give other attorneys who do want to practice in more than one jurisdiction, that don't want to do necessarily pro hoc, but want to actually be fully licensed?
Sure. You look at the states you want to practice. California is kind of hard because there's no reciprocity. So if you can kind of pick and choose, you don't want to take a bar again, get licensed in a state where you can get reciprocity in other states. I don't really know how much advice to give on that. If you want to practice in another state, you'll make it happen. A lot of times the CLE crosses over and you get credit for California, Nevada, and other jurisdictions. So that's nice. You don't have to do CLEs for each individual state.
Right.
But kind of look where you want to live and see what you can do to make it work. Figure out the office situation, see if you can co-share with other people. Starting out, there's a lot of expenses that might be involved. So if you can learn to kind of co-share some of the expenses and co-share some of the workload with other attorneys, I think it's going to make your life and your practice much more enjoyable and less stressful. Although I think every lawyer will tell you there's a little bit of stress involved in our practice.
Just a little bit. I mean, not a lot. That's a good transition. All right. So stress. What have you found that works or helps you cope with this stress? It's a high stakes game, litigation.
Yeah, I do a lot of litigation. And I think the one thing that helps is making sure that you have a work-life balance. And it's hard. It's easier to say it once you've been doing a little bit longer. When you're young, you're worried about losing cases or getting cases or losing clients, being responsive. So I think having work-life balance, and actually having boundaries within your, okay, I'm gonna not respond to emails after 6, or I'm gonna at least shut it down between like 5 and 7. I'll have family time. Maybe I'll go to like 7 or 8 and look at a few emails. But allowing yourself to have boundaries in life and not feeling guilty about keeping those boundaries is a really big thing. And how do I deal with stress? I there's a lot of physical activity, a lot of daytime walks. So I'll probably get up after this and walk, and then a half hour again, I'll probably wander around the office. So I'm on my feet a lot, make a lot of phone calls on my cell phone, walking down the street, just getting outside, seeing the sun. So I'm fortunate to be in California where it's one season in Southern California most of the time. So outside is a big stress coping management for me.
Absolutely. And
Coping
nature is
management system.
so cathartic, and that vitamin D, you cannot like, I can't get enough of the sun, you know? So
Well, I got to be careful. I mean, I am susceptible to some skin conditions, but within healthy boundaries, of course.
absolutely. And how do you, and you also, so you're not just a practicing attorney, you said you own a few branches or different locations. And how do you feel with the stress and both being the attorney and a business owner, because they are a little bit different, even though they're related?
Yeah, the being a business owner is a lot different than being an attorney. You, as a business owner, I feel like you're wearing all the hats, especially if you're a solo shop or you're starting out. You kind of have to learn to be the Swiss Army knife of all situations. So there is a lot of different hats you can wear, and there's a lot of different ways you can take the practice. A lot of people like it. Some people don't like being the manager and just want to be the attorney. So I think it's about finding your strengths and finding your weaknesses and filling the roles appropriately and getting the right people in the right places.
Perfect. And how would you advise someone? Because I agree with you that law school, at least previously, didn't give a lot of practical practice tips, especially like how to run your own thing, how to run your own firm. So did you kind of a baptism by fire? Were you guided? How did you get into that where you were like, I'm going to open my own shop and run with this?
So I was fortunate to have a few people in my life that gave me some cases when I first started. So I had a little bit of a cushion.
Mm-hmm.
That cushion got eaten pretty fast. So I had some role models. Like I said, my brother's an attorney. He started his own practice. But he would be the closest thing to a mentor I have. He kind of taught me the ropes. But the one thing I value from his mentorship is he didn't take me under his wing and was incremental. It was really trial by fire because he was learning as I was learning. And I mean, he was definitely farther along in the process, but there is definitely some people who learn differently. I'm definitely like someone who likes to just dive right in. I learn by my mistakes, and that's kind of how I teach. A lot of people prefer to have more of a coaching type relationship. So I think it's about finding what you're comfortable with and making sure you find someone who's going to kind of guide you along, or at least have some sounding board for getting some piece of advice from other lawyers that have tried it and maybe not been so successful, or tried this route. And it's kind of trial by fire, and making sure that you have a good group of people who you can sound off with and make sure you get good, solid advice and feedback from other people.
So true. And it looks like you got it figured out. Your trial by fire worked out. So that's great.
Trying. I think it's always a process. And as long as you're comfortable with the process, then you can adapt. I mean, COVID was hard for a lot of lawyers. My business was down, especially in the personal injury arena. And you got to take your lumps with your successes and not get too down and not get too high, and learn how to manage what you have and keep the cash in the house and be able to economize your expenses when it's lean. And it's kind of, each year is a learning year. This was one of the hardest testing periods I had. And fortunately, we're responding. And a lot of lawyers I know came out relatively unscathed. So, it's nice to see everyone flourishing, adapting, and evolving. And the pandemic was terrible, but there are some unintended consequences, I think, or benefits that came out of it. Zoom, and then courts allowing us to do depositions and appearances remotely has totally helped us eliminate driving 2 or 3 hours to a court appearance for 15 minutes to come back. So it's definitely made it more convenient, and we're more productive. I call Zoom a cursing and a blessing. It's definitely a curse. I think I said a cursing. It's definitely a curse for me because I get Zoom fatigue.
Right.
But it's also a benefit because I can do this and then I can go and do something else. So it allows us to stack appointments. So I think it's great. There's sometimes I do miss going to in-person things, but then I'm sitting in traffic. I'm like, I love Zoom. So it's a blessing at that point.
I totally agree. I had like about a 4-week period where I would have been out of state for about 4 weeks because of
oh my gosh.
state. And we literally had hearings every almost Friday back to back. And I'm like, I would have been gone for 4 weeks and I get to, sit at home.
Yeah. I
Deal
mean, it's
with
cool
what?
when you're going to places you want to go,
Right.
it's like the hearings, like, oh, I can kind of parlay a vacation out of it. But if it's
Right.
someplace where you're kind of like, it's
Right.
not someplace you envision yourself in, it kind of adds a little excitement or I don't want to go to this type of thing. So
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to know, you talk about, you had a mentor as your brother. And what kind of advice would you give for perhaps people in law school that are looking at personal injury? What is maybe like a good piece of advice you can say, like, you've really got to love it, or how do they get into it?
I don't know how you get into it. I got into it by way of the economy kind of streamlined my brother's practice, and that's what I walked into. Um, I think the best piece of advice or the best thing I did during law school was to go do different types of internships at different law firms.
Okay.
It was a process of elimination for me. Like, oh my gosh, I definitely do not like this area. I don't like this area. I don't like this area. I do like this area. I can see myself in this area. And your desires and what you want to do are going to change over time. So as long as you can kind of go in and get your feet wet in a few areas, you're not going to be able to get in all the areas, but get your feet wet in transactional or litigation or criminal or property or whatever it may be. I think it's going to help mold your future, and it's going to make you a better, well-rounded lawyer, and you're going to appreciate what you do a lot more.
Mhm.
So I think people go in with, I want to be a criminal attorney. I think that's great.
Mhm.
A lot of those people will be great criminal attorneys, but you might find yourself in the third year of law school. Like, I had no idea. I didn't, criminal law is not for me. Maybe I
Right.
want to be a intellectual property lawyer. So
Right.
it's really good for people to go in with plans, but also to be able to adapt and to kind of test out their plans and make sure it's something they want to do for the next 10, 15 years. Because it's the longer you do it, it's harder to make that career change.
That is very, it's kind of like the bar exam. The further out,
Yeah.
the harder it is to switch.
You get more entrenched in your position, and you are less inclined to want to take on changes because it's easier to do what you know as opposed to jumping off a cliff and learning something new. So
Absolutely.
but if you're mid career, I don't think it's a bad thing for people to go and do career changes and never feel like you're stuck, because it's always, there's always, the fruit is always at the end of the tree. You got to go out on the limb to get it. So once you get that fruit, you get the reward, and you got to take some risks sometimes in order to realize a lot of opportunities.
So true. And I mean, if anyone should hear this experience, I mean, you've been through it. You went through law school and you graduated and are practicing through the recession, right? In '08, and then up to a pandemic. You've seen both the practice of law and just society in general with the economy change drastically.
Yeah, I think tech has totally innovated everything. The pace of society is so much faster than when I came out. I mean, I think the iPhone came out when I was in law school.
Mhm.
I still had a flip phone. And tech, we were texting on QWERTY keyboards. So
Right.
just
Like
tech.
me.
Yeah. Thumbs were great. But yeah, tech is great. It's just trying to keep up with it as much as possible. Law is always kind of the last profession to kind of adapt with the times. But as long as you can be open to changing and kind of be flexible with your goals and desires, I think you'll be fine. And there's always a place for people that want to do what they want to do.
It's such good advice too. There really, and you have to love the area you're practicing, because there are just bad days.
Well, yeah, I mean, anyone that says it, I think that's totally true. There's just days where it's a grind, and there's a lot of days when you don't want to wake up and do your job. I don't think it's just for us lawyers or it could be an accountant. It could be someone who's working at the store. There's days where you do not like your job. And if you're having more of those days, then it's time to make a change.
Very true.
There's days when I go home and I don't like my job one bit, and I'm like, what can I do differently? And then I get those days that I come back and I get reinvigorated. So it's definitely a balancing act, and it's being okay with having some discomfort within your job and making sure that it still brings you joy and some type of comfort and just desire to keep doing it and not
Absolutely.
feel like you're burnt out all the time.
So do you have any examples of maybe cases or experiences that have given you that reinvigoration, that give you that passion back that you could share with us?
Sure. People always ask me this question. There's a handful of clients whose cases I always remember because they've become like family to me. For example, one of my first cases, third-party criminal activity cases I took on, client, he's like a big old teddy bear. His name is Dave. He was visiting his aunt. He was taking out the garbage. He ran into some guy that lived at the apartments. His name was Eddie. And there was just a random act of violence where there was a shooting. Eddie got shot. Dave got shot. Eddie unfortunately passed away. And Dave was able to survive and went through a lot of operations and came out in the clear. But, you know, every time I see him, hey, Logan, man, thank you for what you did. Thank you for everything you did. I really appreciate you. It's those clients that it could be a big case, it could be a small case. When they say, hey, you know what, that little bit of money or that treatment you got me, or I couldn't find a doctor and you found me a doctor, thank you so much. That's what makes me happy about what I do. So sometimes it can feel like we're getting a little robotic, especially in the day-to-day cases. But then there's those cases that kind of remind you, hey, these people are human, just like I'm human. I got to remember that and approach my daily life like that. And if I can bring some type of result where the people are just grateful, that makes my day.
Absolutely.
So client satisfaction, yeah. Clients can definitely reinvigorate my passion for what I do. And you know, there are a handful of clients who I can recall their story just like that. And Dave, I think, was a client eight years ago. So to this day, we're still real tight, and he always sends me his referrals. So it's always a good thing.
Cool. That's very good. I mean, yeah, there's no better referral than, you know, word of mouth who've actually, you know, used you, right?
Most definitely. Those are the best referrals you can get because it's a built-in credibility. And you know that if a referral is coming from Mr. Luckett, then I'm going to give him shirt off my back and do whatever I can to make their case resolve quickly and get them top dollar.
So true. So true. All right. Well, okay. So let's talk about real fast. If you were not a personal injury attorney or an attorney at all, what would you want to do? I'm curious.
Good question. So in high school, I wanted to be a sports writer.
Very cool.
I always loved sports, but I stopped growing, I think, my freshman year of high school. So that, and I wasn't that good at them. So in spite of me, I think I'm really good at everything I do, but you know, and internally I'm great. Externally, I'm not. Yeah. If I wasn't a practicing lawyer right now, money not being an issue, I would probably have some type of outdoor job. I always say park ranger, but just something to get me outside and enjoy everything nature has to offer. I'm really big with outdoor activities. So if I can make, you know, money weren't an issue, then that would be some type of job I have. Snowboard instructor.
Or
cool. Maybe.
All right. Where's your snowboard place?
Well, I grew up in
Utah, so we've got some good mountains here. Okay.
Yeah, I've been to most of your mountains. The snow in Utah, it's the champagne powder, right?
It is best snow on earth. That's what we say.
Yeah, the driest snow on earth. So I grew up in California, Northern California. So we got the Sierra Cement. I have a special place in my heart for Kirkwood. Mammoth was my college spot. Now it's kind of wherever the past takes me. So
love it.
They're all owned by a couple of different collectives, and you kind of get access to all the different mountains. But I love Utah. It's a great place to go.
Absolutely. Well, you know, next time you're out, we'll, you know, come out and we'll go shred.
Sounds great.
Very cool. Well, Logan, it's been so great talking to you, and you know, we've loved listening to your stories, and I love the story that you shared about your client too, because those are the kind of stories I think that lawyers do need to hear sometimes when we
need to tell more of those stories.
We do. We really do.
Yeah.
I'd love to tell the listeners out there and everyone watching where they can find you on social media, because you do have a great social media presence. So throw up.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. My Instagram handle is Quirk Accident Attorneys, and I believe the same is for Facebook. Online at quirkwins.com or 833-QUIRK-WINS if you want to talk to me. Perfect. Well, thanks, Logan, and you have a great day. And thanks for watching Lawyer Interviews. Appreciate it.